Good evening. Welcome to the River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, December 17th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mashevsky,
Here.
Odine,
Here.
Swanson,
Here.
Richter,
Here.
Toom, Spafford,
Here.
Wells Mangold.
Here.
First item is approval of the minutes of the November 19th meeting.
I move approval of the minutes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Minutes are approved. Now is the time of our meeting for public comments. If anybody has any comments, they can come up to the microphone and sign in. Anybody? All right, we'll move on. Item number 1 is new business. Resolution recommending City Council proceed with the AMI metering for electric and water.
Utility Board. We have Greg Deach here tonight. Him and I have put together a little presentation. Greg is going to take the majority of this presentation. I probably will chime in a few times, but we also gave this presentation to City Administrator Scott Simpson about 2 weeks ago, and he was pretty excited about the program as well. AMI metering, again, we've been talking about this for probably 18 months, and we're going to probably get a little deeper into the weeds tonight. We also have Virgil Johnson here tonight who's going to show us a little bit about what these advanced meters actually are physically and what it takes to install one of these. So at some point, Greg will get Virgil involved and he'll show you some of his gear, safety gear. And Wayne Cyberling is here as well, our electric superintendent, to answer questions. So Greg, we've been working on this for a while. Advanced metering infrastructure, why don't we take it away?
We have. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here. All right, so we've been working on a pilot project for the AMI. So AMI is Advanced Metering Infrastructure, and our current meters are AMR meters, a previous generation, which is called Advanced Meter Reading. Is that the terms are not they're not the most clear when you think of them through, but we'll try to walk you through a little bit about what the differences are, and just give you a insight into the pilot project that we've been running. Talk a little bit about an outage management system that WPPI has developed in the past year, and this technology is changing very quickly. The meters form sort of the foundation, and on top of that, they're building software that can enable a lot of functionality. And we're kind of right in the middle right now. About half the country has done AMI and half of it has not. So many places have done it. We'll talk a little bit about the budget and then the project plan.
I think that's an important piece just to reiterate. Again, we're talking AMI metering. We are not cutting edge or bleeding edge with advanced metering infrastructure. Probably just more than half of the electric meters in the country are already to advanced meter infrastructure. So this is not the beginning of it. We're kind of in the middle and headed towards the last phases of installation in our country.
Yeah, I found a government report, I can't remember which agency, from I think 2 years ago, and they said at that time it was about 48% market penetration. I think I included that in the report, and different states were leading the way. I think most notable maybe California. They're very progressive, and then Washington D.C. I think had the highest rate of installation. And Wisconsin was somewhere kind of in the middle. So these meters, they have the ability to communicate two ways. The current ones, every 15 seconds they broadcast out a message saying, here's my current reading, and they just keep doing that. And they wait for Virgil to drive by in his vehicle, and it collects that data, and then we bring it back to City Hall. With these new meters, they communicate with one another, and I think I heard you talking about a gatekeeper earlier. A gatekeeper is just a collection device. All the meters eventually transmit their data back to the gatekeeper, which then puts it on the internet securely to WPPI, and that feeds into our billing system. So rather than having to drive around, we can get meter reads whenever we need to. So we can get it for billing, we can get it for a move in or move out, final read, that type of situation. Without needing to send anybody to take any time out of someone's day. So we've been working on this project, and by we, I mean Virgil and Brian have really led the way on this. They've been doing a lot of work.
I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
One, that we were talking about gatekeepers. We had a side conversation. So just talk about how many gatekeepers we have today, where they are, and then how many gatekeepers we plan to have at the end of the project. And before you go there, I want to hit on, you were talking about the RF meters pulse every 15 seconds to send data. How often do the AMI meters pulse out to send data?
They pulse 1.5 seconds every 4 hours, so about 9 seconds a day if I've done my math right.
So 9 seconds a day versus, what did you say, about 360 seconds?
No, I think it was 600 or 700 seconds. I'd have to look at the report. It was right in that range, so.
AMI meters pulsing much less amount of time.
Right, and we had some community members raise some concerns about that, and so we really dug into it. And really what we found was the best available information that we have is that, well, radio frequencies are everywhere, but digging, focusing specifically on the AMI meters, they're using the same radio frequency as the AMR meters. They use it less often. And so if there ever were to be a concern about that, and once again, I don't think there is a concern, we'd be in a better position, not a worse position. So that's how I would frame that. Yeah, so gatekeepers. We're adding some slides to the deck here tonight. Gatekeepers. We have 2 gatekeepers installed. There's one at the north sub, one at the south substation. Each gatekeeper can handle 2,000 meters apiece, so we currently have a capacity of 4,000 meters. We will need a capacity of about 12,000 meters. That's how many meters we have in the city between electric and water. So that means we need 7 gatekeepers to have a minimally functioning system. I believe we've ordered 9, and we're planning on putting 8 in. And that way, if a gatekeeper goes down for any reason, we still have the ability to maintain our system while we replace it or do whatever needs to be done to fix that issue. And gatekeepers are cheap. They're like $800. So $800 times, even if you had 10, you're talking 8,000 out of a much larger budget. So they're cheap insurance to have a good system.
In the program that gatekeeper writes back to WPPI and to the utility, who owns that?
Who owns it? I don't know for sure. I would assume WPPI. We own the hardware, and then it's an encrypted connection, a secure connection back to their servers. Because remember, they host North Star billing system and things like that. So it ends up on their computing equipment.
So they're responsible for that.
They would be responsible, yes. Right. Right. So there's a software tool called Energy IP, and that manages the meters. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we just upgraded, I think 9 months ago, to version 8, which supports AMI meters. And that's in use among a number of utilities across Wisconsin. Any utility that has AMI meters through WPPI would have the same software, and is already using it.
So the physical equipment we own, the data storage and software is WPPI.
Yes.
Does that help, Kevin?
Yep, that is, yep, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in. There's a lot of details.
Conversation too, so you guys can jump in anytime. You don't have to wait till Greg and Virgil are done. If you have questions, just go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I put a lot into the report, and this is kind of the report light, the slideshow here. So we've, and by we I mean Brian and Virgil, have installed. I checked this afternoon, 362 meters, and they're spread across the city. Most of them are business customers. We had kind of developed a policy internally that business customers and city staff who are interested in city property were eligible for the pilot project. And the reason for including business customers first is that they get a big benefit out of it right away. The AMI meters have power quality information that they record in 15-minute intervals. And I'm sure Virgil could talk a lot more about that if you're interested. But what it means is that if they have any type of issue, they can go back and look in their history and say, oh, okay, here's what happened here. Is it a problem with the utility, or is it a problem with our equipment? And the other thing they love is the renaming. It's going to be called My Meter, but right now it's called My Account.
My Account is what it's going to.
But the neat thing is you can see graphs and other things. So a business customer they might want to limit which motors turn on at which times to limit their peaks, because that affects what rate they're going to pay. So going back and looking at this, they can say, oh wow, I've got this huge peak right here, what's going on, what motors do I need to coordinate, that type of thing. So they get a lot of just instant value out of it, especially an industrial type of customer.
Maybe build on that. I know Virgil's dealt with customers, some commercial customers who have had some internal issues with wiring or controls, and they maybe thought it was utility. Virgil can go to that meter, download the data off the meter, and then have a conversation with that customer to talk about when they had the concern and show them what the power quality actually was at the meter versus what they're seeing inside their building. It can help them detect issues within their building. So that's been pretty useful in several instances.
Yeah, it's been very, very helpful. Right, so we've been working on that pilot project. I think in general it's gone pretty smoothly. Yeah, it really, it's been pretty nice. I think the frosting on the cake, as it were, for myself was recently we had a power outage. I think you saw, I think the picture's actually in this report. Yeah, and WPPI's outage management system that they just built this year sent me a text and said, hey, power's out. And that's only with 360 some meters installed. So in the future, we should be able to know almost instantly, this group of 3 or 4 houses out because their transformer blew. And Wayne says, squirrel. Or we can say, wow, all of Whitetail is down. Somebody hit a feeder, and let's go get that fixed right now, right? And so no one needs to call in, and that's a big improvement in customer service and just all the way around, I think. So
I think the pilot program, it can't be understated the importance of getting these 300 or so AMI meters out there. What it's done is it's helped Virgil and Brian out in the field learn how to install these meters, record them in Northstar. It's helped our inner office billing people be able to get used to this new meter and how things are input. It's helped check our gatekeepers and our gatekeeper locations. So we're learning a ton of things, both physically in the field, internally with our systems, Virgil and Brian physically with getting these things installed, working with customers. So there's a lot of good things that have happened with the pilot program to really get us into this program flying pretty good and having learned quite a bit already.
Right. And as part of this pilot, I also got in contact with the PSC because they regulate the water meters. And whenever you do a technology upgrade, so AMI to AMR is enough to trigger a PSC construction authority process. And we also checked into the electric just to double, triple check. And there is no requirement on that side. So we've been talking to the PSC. We've learned about the paperwork that needs to be filled out. We've been working on a tariff with them, so a non-standard meter tariff. And what that means is that if someone were to be extremely concerned about having an AMI meter versus an AMR meter, they could keep their AMR meter. The tariff says that you have to have a utility-approved meter, and then for a monthly fee, which I think today we're just discussing internally. There's some math you have to do to figure out what the PSC will allow you to charge for, and basically you're just trying to cover your costs for reading a meter that isn't automatically reporting. It's going to be like around $22, I think, a month, in that range.
That's if somebody wants to opt out of the AMI meter program.
Right.
So having done this in another community and then talking to other communities as well, I would guess our over and under might be 3 to 5 customers who opt out in a community of our size with this many meters. It may end up being 0, but
Yeah.
typically you see a couple people that say, I'll pay the money to not have the MI meter. So that just...
Yeah, from the conversations I've had with other communities, they'll have 10 people say, oh my gosh, I don't want that. And then when it comes right down to it, 1 or 2. And many communities have even chosen not to have an NSM tariff, they call it. And they haven't had problems. So this is just an extra kind of service for our customers, in case they do have a concern. And
I don't want people to feel cornered on this if they really feel that strongly about it and are willing to pay the monthly fee. I really, that's maybe my personal opinion, but I don't want to have people feel like the utility is putting something on them that they cannot live with. And so we give them an option.
Right. Let's see, what else? The last bullet point here is we've been looking at the cost of hiring someone to help with the water meter changeouts. And the reason is that we originally were talking, what would it take, how long would this project take if we used our staff exclusively? And the answer is about 5 years if that's all they did. And we felt that 5 years was too long, and clearly it would be longer, right, if we were to make it into a realistic workload. We felt that was too long, considering that the hardware that we have right now that reads the AMI meters is end of life. I can't remember exactly when, in a couple of years, right? And so we'd have to relicense that and possibly purchase new hardware depending on if things are changing or not. And just to realize the complete benefit of an AMI system, it's better to have it installed in a shorter time frame. So we got some quotes from a company called HydroCorp, and we also spoke with Hudson, the city of Hudson, who has successfully used HydroCorp to implement their AMI system for their water meters. And we double-checked Hudson's numbers with what HydroCorp told us, and they match pretty well. So,
So just to highlight that, we know how many electric meters Virgil and Brian can install every day. What do we are estimating? 60 or 70?
we're saying about. Don't correct me if I'm wrong, Virgil, but how many meters would you like to install? We can do. We've heard some utilities, brag 60 a day or something like this, or and that's about what we've been thinking is about 30 per guy, without overloading them, right? So we don't. It's not their sole. Their complete focus, right? They do other things.
Electric meters installed per day.
Per day.
In contrast, water meters.
About 6 per person, so maybe 12.
Yeah, it's just because electric meter, you don't have to get into the house. We have to inform the customer. It's a manual. Pull a meter off, put a meter on, do some inputting in your iPad. But for the water meter, you have to actually schedule appointments, get in the house, get in the basement, do some work. So it's a lot more time consuming. So I just wanted to highlight the difference between the two.
Right, and then you'll notice up there we have cross-connection inspections as part of the, and scheduling as part of what we'd like the contractor to help with. Cross-connection inspections is not necessary for AMI, but something we're already doing and we need to do with per the DNR. And we just like to get in someone's house or business once and not come back, 6 months, a year or two later, and just repeat the same process. So we're just trying to be good stewards of everyone's time. And from the office side of an AMI project, the scheduling is really the most difficult part and time-consuming piece. And I've heard this over and over again as I talk to different utilities. And so the thought here, and Hudson did this as well, is use your contractor for scheduling as well. And it's kind of a temporary job that lasts about 3 years, and then it's kind of over. So it's like this extra load that takes time, and then it's gone. And so rather than try to manage that internally, we thought it would be better to have the contractor help us out with that.
A brief tease on the scheduling. I think one thing Hudson did is they allow the customer to schedule their own appointments. So you're able to go in, schedule ahead of time, pick a date. So the incentive is earlier you schedule, the better date you get that will fit your schedule. So,
and they did it all online, which is really neat. And being able to schedule online and get a text reminder saying, hey, your appointment's tomorrow. Very much like your doctor or dentist or, hair cutter, that type of thing. It's pretty common now, but it's maybe a little different from what we've done in the past. But I think it's a really good service to provide. So as part of this project, I think we already talked about some of the benefits. The commercial customers really, really liked it. They get some good real-time information. They also get good historical data, and that helps them figure out what they need to do to optimize the price that they're paying for electricity. The WPPI outage management system, at some point, we'll be able to put a map up on our website with little pins saying, hey, this is out, this is out. So our customers can actually just go to our website and see, oh yeah, they already know that my service is out. And maybe we can even post a little message there saying, we think your service will be restored in 45 minutes or something like that. The other advantages here are somebody wants to move out of their rental unit, and we have a big rental market here. They push a button upstairs, and within a few seconds, they've got a final read on that property. Or they can, if there's a certain time that they need to do it, it doesn't really matter, but it'll be accurate to within 15 minutes, which is very nice. And I was just brainstorming about this today too. We had a customer that was almost got cut off today, but we didn't have to, and that was a good thing because they paid their bill. But had they been cut off, and let's say they paid the bill 10 minutes after they got cut off, with an AMI system from City Hall, we can push a button and they're back on. We just have to make contact with them and make sure that they're there, and so when the power comes back on, make sure everything's okay. So there's benefits even on that side of the coin, so to speak. On our side, we start to get the ability to tie what the customer. So electricity is generated on demand, and in older meter systems, you can't tell when energy is used, right? So we start to get the ability to tie the cost of electricity to the time of day you used it, and if you're using it 5, 6 o'clock at night, maybe it costs more than 3 in the morning, right? Because 3 in the morning there's not as much demand, and that data. How does that work? WPPI purchases a lot, energy in blocks, and they try to predict loads and things like this. And this data will help feed into that purchasing, so they can make better informed decisions about purchasing power and that type of thing. And then here's a special one for Virgil. You don't have to get chased by dogs anymore. So we have the ability to do a remote disconnect. We still have to follow the same protocols and procedures with the disconnect, but we can do it without having to send someone to a backyard where there's a dog, or just someone who maybe doesn't want you there. So you don't have to get the police involved, that type of thing. It just kind of makes the process easier.
Right. I want to just build on two things that are kind of my favorites up here. One is, when you pay your utility bill today, it's typically 5 or 6 weeks after you use the commodity. There's not much correlation between the commodity you're using, electricity or water, and what you're paying for. I like to look at the shoulder months especially. I like to look at late August, when you're running your air conditioner in the last 2 weeks of August, but you aren't going to get your utility bill till probably late September, and it's been cool in September, and you can't really understand why your electric bill's so high, and you forgot that you used that a month ago. There's just not much correlation in today's pay 5 or 6 weeks later to the actual energy you used. This is going to tie the commodity a lot closer to the value. You're going to be able to look back tomorrow and see what you used yesterday and how you used it. And so you're going to begin to tie the usage of water and electricity to actually what you're paying for, which, again, we're going to be in the infancy of this, and there's going to be a lot of things to come in the next 5, 10, 15 years. They're going to tie directly, kind of like your gas gauge, right? You need gas, you go get it. We need electricity, you're going to say, I'm going to go get it. And that's coming, not tomorrow, not 5 years, but 10, 15 years. That type of technology is coming, and this is setting the base for that. That's one thing that kind of gets me a little excited. You're going to be able to maybe understand the value of what you're using a little better. The second thing is this outage management system. I think that's underplayed. That's a big deal. Again, you're going to have an outage. We're going to know instantly. You're going to be able to go to our website and see it. We might be able to tie that website to social media, but people are going to know instantly and be able to see instantly where the outages are, how many people are out in general areas, not specific areas. We're going to be able to message people, let them know. So literally in a year or so, many of our customers will not even need to call in anymore when there's an outage. That's pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of a life changer, like a cell phone compared to a wireless telephone in your home from 20 years ago. Suddenly you're free, right? You don't have to worry about it. And
we were trying to think some analogies today. What is AMI metering and why is it so important? It's kind of, I was saying it was kind of like when I was 16 years old in the early 80s in a computer class, and I didn't really understand why we were even getting computers. We'd make the little dynamic car that would go across, animated car that would go across the screen, and I thought that was kind of cool, but I really didn't get what computers could be someday, right? We just knew computers are cool, they're going to be able to do a lot of things in the future. A lot of people had great ideas, which I didn't see, a lot of people didn't see. And now we have our cell phones, which are 10,000 times greater capacity than those old computers. And boy, no one who had that vision of what that could be in a pretty short time. AMI metering is kind of the same way. This is the building block for many things that are going to help our customers understand energy usage, the way they pay for it, the way they interact with it, to help them conserve energy, outage management systems, a lot of things that we can't even really see today that it might be able to help our customers with.
Right, yeah.
And so we were using the phone thing. So we used to say, what was wrong with a rotary phone? Nothing. Nothing was wrong with that. And then someone had said, let's do a wireless phone in the house. That was kind of cool. You could walk around. And then someone said a cell phone. But yeah, there was really nothing wrong with a rotary phone, but we advanced, right, to give yourself more possibilities, greater connections, and more things. So this is kind of like that.
Right, yeah. And the system gives us a lot of insight into what's going on, and the customer as well. So, a customer might look at the data and say, wow, I know that I ran my air conditioner yesterday, and look at this time when it was running, that cost me $3. And 3 times 30 is, right, 90. And so they can make a decision there. The data we have is delayed by 24 hours, so that's kind of a current limitation of the new system. I suspect that'll improve with time. On the utility side, within a day, we'll know if somebody has tampered with a meter. So the meters have a sensor that says, hey, somebody's been, maybe jiggling on this. Is that how it works, Virgil? I'm really using some technical terms here. Yep, like Will Smith being yeah, we'll just let that one go. So there's an advantage for us that we'll know on day 1 instead of day 30 that this meter's been tampered with and that there's a problem. So that helps everyone out. Someone can't steal power for an entire month. They can steal power for maybe 24 hours if they're really, really lucky.
Alerts. Did you get into alerts? Setting up alerts for leaky water pipes,
right.
High usage, another benefit.
Right. So we've talked a lot about the electric, and there's a lot of benefits there. On the water side, I view it like insurance. I kind of wish I had the feature right now because I'm gone on weekends quite often from my house, and I turn on the temperature, and I'm always afraid, am I going to come back to a burst pipe or something like this? And on the water side, we get the same, I think it's 15 minutes. It might be an hour interval. I can't remember off the top of my head. And this feature does not exist yet, but I can easily imagine the software being built that's, you could set up an alert that says, if I've used 1,000 gallons in a day, because my average use is maybe 200 gallons a day, send me a text message. And maybe the kids left a hose on, maybe you forgot to turn off the sprinklers.
Toilet's running.
Maybe your toilet's broken or running, yep. Or maybe you have a burst pipe in your house. And I've personally experienced 2 occasions this summer where I wished I had known that my toilet was going to use 3,000 gallons that day before I got it fixed. So it's I think even on the water side, we don't have we don't have the disconnect feature, we don't have all these different things, but there's still a lot of value there. Is I guess what we're trying to say.
Greg, could I ask you and Kevin or whoever the question about, it's great. I love, advanced technology and stuff. I do have a cell phone, but we have lots of friends that in the city that don't have that built in yet. So I've heard a lot about internet. I'll send you a text message, Can you speak a little towards maybe the older group that doesn't?
Oh, sure. Yeah, one of the things that I found that was interesting, and I think we'd talk about this internally before we did it, because I know maybe some policy might need to be made around it. But I know, for example, that Hudson, with their water AMI system, they receive a report nightly from WPPI, and the reason they look at it at the night hours is because typically the water flow is low or non-existent. So if you see a continual flow of water for a customer, they probably have a leaking toilet, right? And so the customers, the CSRs, the customer service representatives will call those customers and say, hey, we just noticed that it looks like your water might be running. If it's not, no big deal, but we noticed this on your water, and just kind of as an extra service. So it doesn't have to be a text message. It could be utility staff monitoring and noticing and making phone calls to help out our customers.
Internal alerts,
And we get internal alerts too.
be an internal alert.
Right, yep. So if usage looks way out of the ordinary, both for electric and water, that does trigger alerts in the system, I think even today. Am I correct? It
Yes.
does, yeah. And so even today, you know, well, but I should rephrase. Even today we get these types of alerts, but it could be delayed up to a month, right? Versus maybe 24 or 48, maybe a week of time might pass and, you know, it might get a trigger a lot sooner. And it can save you a lot of money potentially if you do have a leaky faucet or something like that. So,
And they would have the option to call a number too if they have a concern potentially?
I'm sure, yes, I'm sure we'd set that up.
That's something.
Because we recognize
Yeah.
not every customer is going to have that technology, so.
yeah, and our office staff can easily look up that information, so if someone had a concern, they could pop in the next day and say, you know, my toilet ran all day yesterday, what's the damage, right? So even they could definitely do that. It would be very possible, yeah.
I can add something about the electric meter.
Sure.
We're having the new AMI meters.
Would you like to come up and?
You know, a lot of people may not even have a computer, but we're having the meter set up so they will scroll to a different displays, and one of the displays is the instantaneous kilowatts that you're using right at the moment. So you could just kind of watch that and say, why am I using 3 kilowatts per hour? Sort of thing where you're drying clothes or baking a cake, sort of thing like that. So it's kind of handy. You know, right now, some of the meters just spin faster, but with these, they'll actually give you an actual display of how many kilowatts per hour you're using right now, which is kind of nice, you know, so.
Yeah, it is really nice. In fact, on my house, I looked at it and I said, I thought everything was off right now. Why am I using 100 watts? And I went and looked downstairs and I had 2 subwoofers and they're turned off. And I happen to own a meter called a kilowatt. It's maybe like $15-20. You plug it in your wall and it tells you what you're using. And I went around my house looking and I found out my subwoofers consumed 80 watts while they were turned off. And if you do the math, you find out 80 watts is really ballparking here, about $8 a month. And to make a long story short, I found a really neat little power strip that can automatically turn them off when they're not being used, based on if the stereo is turned on. And you know, they paid for themselves. That paid for itself in 2 months because I had that information and I thought to look. You know, not everybody's going to look, but if you do think to look, you might discover some interesting things.
That's a smart strip that we're giving away at the customer service.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we gave a smart strip away at the customer. I'm just going to re-say what Virgil was saying so it ends up on the YouTube video. But yeah, we gave away smart power strips, and that's what they are. One plug on this power strip is smart, and if that device is turned on, the other plugs on the power strip turn on, otherwise they're shut off. So you imagine like your computer with a printer. You know, if your computer's off, you can have the printer automatically off. Or in my case, the stereo's off, the subs turn off, and saves power. So kind of a neat technology. We've been talking a lot about the OMS, Outage Management System, and this is very difficult to see here, but I'll see if I can point it out. This is the outage that happened when the feeder at the north sub went down. And the AMI system messaged me and said, hey, it's down. And these circles, you probably can't see it from where you're sitting, but they have a number inside them. That's the number of meters that are down in that area. And so you can see right here, we've got meters here in these 3 locations that are reporting as out. And so that gave our guys, gives our guys a really good idea of where to go to fix a problem, and also the size and the scope of the problem. Is it just one customer? Is it 10? Is it 100 or more? Right. And so the neat thing about this on our side is that we can actually zoom right into this and see individual services that are out. It shows a dot by each service location, and you click on it to tell you the address, the customer account number, things like that. So you can find out very quickly what's wrong and where. And the idea is that at some point, when WPPI finishes developing this technology, that we'd be able to expose a map like this on our website, maybe not get down to the individual service address and account numbers, but just zoom in far enough where you can say, okay, I can see my house is covered by that bubble. You know, there's 14 outages right here, and I'm in that area. And so I'm confident that the utility knows that my power's out. And I can't, this to me is just really, really neat. I think it's really cool.
And it's fresh and new. We were talking about this a year ago, wondering when and how we were going to do this. And this
Right.
literally has happened like in the last 6 weeks. So this is fresh, new, and it's going to be available at any time now.
Right, yeah, 18 months ago, I think I was at the WPPI Outage Management Task Force down in Sun Prairie. We were talking about this, and here it exists today. So it's pretty neat to see something that we, kind of thought in our minds come into reality.
And minimal cost. We weren't sure what the kind of cost it was going to be to get an outage management system, and now we've got one built in with,
Right.
with the AMI system right at WPPI for nothing, basically.
Literally for nothing, almost. I think Phil said his guy spent a week or maybe a month on this. Like, it's very little time. And they got a lot of bang for the buck out of that. And you probably can't see down real low here, but you can also click on buttons to refresh. It kind of sends out a ping to the meters to say, hey, are you back up? And so it's a real-time system, or near real-time. So it gives a lot of information and telemetry into what is going on. So I would, just every time I get a text message, maybe I shouldn't be delighted, but I kind of am. Right. The last one I received, we talked about piloting AMI, but we've also taken out one AMI meter. And I got a message for that, and I was like, why? The Glen Park shelter just went, oh, okay. So we started talking about it, and I'm like, okay, we're upgrading, we're getting ready to do the Glen Park renovations, right? And so Virgil, I think, had taken out that meter, and, we got a message saying 1 meter's out at Glen Park, so you know right away. Nobody has to tell you. When Virgil put it on the tester and powered it back up, then it looked like it was back alive for a little bit, and then we got another outage message when he powered it off. So that meter gave us two outages.
Speaking of Virgil working, it might be, I'm thinking we're over half done with this, but it might be a good time to have Virgil kind of break up the monotony of the presentation here and let Virgil show you a little bit about what he does and what he uses and the equipment he has to install one of these meters and what a meter looks like. Virgil, you want to take a minute and just show the folks your equipment, and maybe Greg, you could MC that over there since from the mic. So, first of all, this is we're installing 7,500 electric meters, and it's a relatively safe process, but everyone you have to be very careful with. We encourage safety, and there's a lot of safety equipment and a lot of safety gear to ensure that our folks remain safe while doing this work. So, Virgil, you want to talk a little bit about the meter and then what you're doing at each house?
Sure. This is a portable meter socket. We're just using it.
Should we, let's just take you over by the microphone.
You have to get to the mic. There you go.
Typical of what
So use the mic, Virgil.
So if you talk there, then they can all hear you.
Excellent.
this is like a portable meter socket, but we've used it like for 20, 30 years for checking usage on refrigerators and different things like that. So you can just plug it into the wall. But we're also using it as like a portable AMI meter for signal strength and things like that, just to check to see if we can get reception. Like I had it inside the base of the water tower in the Gulf View Tower, and we couldn't get any reception there, so we're gonna have to go with an external antenna. But typically this is what the residential meter would look like, and we'd pull the cover off, make sure there's no illegal taps or anything, make sure the socket's in good shape and no settling of the service wires and stuff like that, and then we just install it. We watch the display. These new meters actually will display the voltage coming into the meter, displays current, displays, it locks onto the max kW of that site until you clear it. Then it's got received kilowatts and delivered if you had a solar system that's tied into the meter. So it'll display either one, plus it's also feeding back into WPPI. Also, it has a gatekeeper registration, so we kind of know if the radio is working right, if it's connecting up. If it's not, it just stays on at 8. So then we got to quick figure out, we got to hurry up and find another path, We've already had experimenting with that, so, we're getting it working, but It also will display the instantaneous kilowatts, which is pretty good for high bill complaints and stuff like that. If you've had people with in-floor heat that was stuck on, he goes, oh, it's always warm in that room from the sun. And it's like, no, it's your heat is stuck on, and they ran up probably $100 extra bill. Stuff like that. So these are actually quite nice for that kind of stuff. So it can be used without a computer. You just look at it, and the line crew and everybody can use it for troubleshooting, because you just watch it scroll and see if the voltage is correct. If there's really high loads on the meter, you might want to think about using the main breaker to shut it off before you pull it off, because there'll be a lot of sparks flying otherwise. Stuff like that. So it's really pretty advanced and got a lot of nice features to it. Actually, there's another feature we're looking into is they do have if the meter itself gets hot from settled services or bad connections in there. Over the years, I've seen, a few of these where, like, the place is about ready to burn down, I would say. And we had a study that, like, in the United States, I think there was 600 homes that caught fire because of that kind of stuff. These have a temperature sensor in there, so it'll send a signal back. We got to figure out the right temperature to set it at. It'll send out a signal it's a hot meter socket. Or it also will, if it gets too hot, and there's a setting in there for that, it will actually disconnect the power to the house automatically in case of a fire or a hot socket. Or
And the firefighters really like that.
yeah, that's something really cool thing too about it too. So where those old meters there's no way anything like that would do any of that. So
Virgil, why don't you pass that meter around to those folks and you can show them some of the gear you use? So when every meter that Virgil and Brian do, they have to
Typically
have
we
special
use,
equipment on. So
we use
there's
like
a thing
protective
that can
gear.
happen. It's called an arc flash
Right.
sometimes. So this is preventing against that. Talk to us about that, Virgil.
Yeah, some of the 480 volt settings are actually quite dangerous because once the arc ionizes, it can explode in your face. So we try to stick with these protective shields and the arc flash hood and protective clothing. So typically, if you see me like this in your yard, don't think there's someone trying to break into your house. It's just me.
Let's hope they're not listening to the War of the Worlds.
Right. And this is the same way. I'd have a kind of a big suit on with this hood on.
How many times
So
does
it
copper
kind of
expand?
protecting me from the arc flash. Of course, if you see, someone walking around your house like that, it's like, typically though, that's more the commercial stuff where the 480 volt stuff comes in. I would wear something like that. Around your house, typically, we'd have a hard hat, safety glasses, and if there was a kind of a problem, then we'd probably switch over to the shield. So, yeah.
I just want to reemphasize too, and again, safety first. We don't. It's not a race, and we want to be safe, and we
Yeah.
want to make sure we get these installed without any incidents. So.
Right, yeah, there's lots of stuff you gotta check and make sure you do it right, otherwise, if you surely don't wanna get the wrong meter on the wrong house sort of thing. End up with some billing errors, you maybe heard of that already, but,
What kind of lifespan
trying to be as careful as we can.
I'm curious, what kind of lifespan do you get out of the AMR, and what are you expecting to get out of the new one?
Well, I've got, I'm pulling off some meters right now that were installed in 1979. We retrofitted an AMR module to it, and they were still working today, so the meters last a long time.
How about AMI meters, Virgil? What's the life expectancy of an new AMI meter?
Well, I'm guessing it's very similar because when Shopko was first built, we had an Elster meter installed. They're almost the same as they are now, except they do not have the AMI module in them. Although, back when we installed Itron drive-by AMR, this Elster stuff was available, an early version of it using DOS and everything. So, some utilities are actually still using that. So it varies, we had a AMI meter fail at the high school. We think it got hit by lightning over there, so anything can go wrong, you know. But overall, if it doesn't get hit by lightning, I'm thinking 20, 30 years probably, you know.
And that's pretty typical because
Thanks, Virgil, appreciate
If
it.
you don't mind my interjection, sorry. The water meters are planned to be replaced every 20 years. And we replace a certain percentage of them each year so that, and the number is slipping my mind and I should know, it's just one of those things. But basically what we do is we replace a certain percentage each year so that we're always replacing meters that are just about to the end of their life cycle. And so it's a 20-year planned life with a water meter. The difference between a water meter and an electric meter is that the water meters have a battery, and they transmit their meter read to the electric meter, which then transmits that signal back to the gatekeeper and then to WPPI and eventually to us, right? So that battery does have an expiration date, whereas on an electric meter, you might get some more time out of it. But 20 years is a pretty reasonable expectation. The budget, the numbers. So the budget looks about like this. We've budgeted $1.72 million. It's the budget I came up with earlier this year. I think it was back in May. We're looking at about $846,000 for the electric meters and about $874,000 for the water meters. And these are, I tried to build in some buffer here so that we could, you know, if prices change or we found a new feature we wanted to use, and we did with the electric meters. I built in a 5% contingency initially. On the electric side, they came out with a better electric meter, and that fit within the contingency, and so we're planning on purchasing it. The original electric meters would send a outage notification if there was a brownout. But we don't really, I mean, we care about that, but we don't really want an outage notification for that. The meters that we're going to be purchasing wait 90 seconds to make sure the power is out, and they collect the messages from the meters around them, and then they transmit that back. And so we have a very reliable indication that the power has actually gone out. And we felt that that extra expense was more than worth it because we essentially got a free outage management system from WPPI instead of having to spend what, $100,000, $200,000, maybe more on our own outage management system. And so the extra $10 per meter seemed well worth the cost. So these are the top of the line numbers. I hope to come in a bit underneath this. So as we go through the next slides, you'll notice that my numbers on the next slides are lower, and that's because they're using the actual numbers that I have available. So we've got the electric budget, and there's about $27,000 in startup costs. That's some licensing fees, some software that needs to be purchased, a few things like that. On the electric side, it's pretty simple. The startup is pretty easy. It's, you know, buy a few things and we're pretty much on our way. The meters themselves are about $797,000. So your total is really going to be closer to $824,000 is the plan currently. And I just updated these numbers with the vendor in November, so they're current. The water is just a lot more complicated and a little bit more expensive. It costs about $52,000 to get started, and there's some hardware that also needs to be purchased that can program the meter heads. And there's training involved and just some other things going on there that bump up that cost a bit. The meter heads themselves are $437,000, and I planned $120,000 a year for a contractor to help us, and so that's where the $360,000 comes in. So it's intended to be a 3-year project, and so our total cost should be $849,000, give or take. That's our current best guess. With the water, just kind of want to break this down a little bit for you a little bit more. The plan is that our staff installs about 533 a year over a 3-year period, each year over a 3-year period. That's about 10 a week. That's pretty manageable, and they feel like that's a reasonable workload. The contractor, if they cost $90 a meter, that gives us about 4,000 meters. That gets us to our 55, 50, 600 meter count, right? And again, the contractor will be doing more than just installing a meter head or a meter. They'll be putting in possibly a new meter if it's needed. The plan there is if the meter is half life or more, replace it. So if it's 10 years old or more. And if you remember earlier, I said that we replace the meters on a schedule. So that means that on average, our meters are always about 10 years old. So we're just kind of going in the middle number. That keeps us out of the customer's property for 5 to 10 years pretty easily. So we don't have to go back. We don't have to be annoying. And we get a lot of value out of that meter without having to put our guys right back in a house to work on something. Again, the contractor, we'd like them to do cross-connection inspections as well. That's probably a bigger time commitment there than actually doing the meter upgrade. But we feel it's worth it. And we'd also like them to handle scheduling. We had talked to HydroCorp. Ron, he's not here tonight, our wastewater and water superintendent. We talked to HydroCorp, and they said $82 to $85 a meter. And the number we'd gotten from Hudson is they said, probably plan on 90, and these should be safe. So I planned on 90. HydroCorp says they're a little lower, and we kind of figured they would. So what I'm saying here is we've got room in the budget. We've got $5 a meter room to play pretty easily, possibly a little more. So again, there's a little buffer built in here, and we might be able to have the contractor install more meters, or maybe we have them install fewer, depending on how our guys do. Any questions?
I have an academic question that's not
Sure.
related to the budget or anything. Is it now okay to do that?
Absolutely.
So I have asked this, it's academic,
Sure.
but the privacy issue, I'm not worried the least bit about this run.
Sure.
This is great. So, but down the road, I'll ask the question first. Who are the policymakers related to the information sharing and those things? And then context. So I have heard from somebody that a relative of theirs has a forge in town. I don't know what the legalities of that are or whatever, but I'm not interested in us being an enforcement agency or connected to one. And is that locally decided? Is that a state issue? Where does that kind of stuff happen?
Generally, so what I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, even today we could be served a warrant for information, I think, from the police. Right. Really, it's the city council that drives the policy, and utility advisory board that drives the policy on that. I would be pretty quick to point out that we're not able to tell what you're doing with the water or the power. We just know that you used it.
So right now we're not, but the president of WPPI was here, and he basically said Google knows. Now what he said is, so these meters they're gonna fine tune over time, and a jump of this much is gonna tell Google or whoever you just turned your blender on,
Sure.
which sounds crazy, and it's in the future. So that's more what I'm talking about here. Is not this round is, like I said, this is great.
Right, yeah, an instantaneous, and these meters they collect 15-minute intervals, so it's going to be, that interval is going to, you're not going to see a spike because you turned on your washing machine and then used your microwave and ran your forge. It's going to be, in the last 15 minutes, you used 1 kilowatt, and that's what we know. We don't know any more, we don't know any less.
Greg and I were discussing this today too about what the AMI meter will do. Possibly, we're in our discussion, we're saying it's probably not the AMI meter that's going to be doing the interacting, but it might be another device in your home, a Google Alexa type thing or something like that that is talking to your appliances and understanding that. So
Right, many of these apps, interact with other sources of data, and one could imagine maybe Google or Alexa, Amazon, or who knows what company it is or is the dominant force at the time, but they might have a device that communicates over the internet back to your electric provider and says, this device is running, and maybe there's some sort of cost savings program, something like, we've talked about in the past, there's been programs where you install a device and it can shut off your hot water heater at certain times of the day. That already exists, right? And you could probably do something pretty similar using,
we have that program here. It's called Hot Shot, I believe, where you
Right.
get a $50 rebate, $50 rebate per year, and then we could shut your hot water heater off in peak days and stuff
Right.
like that. Air
You know,
conditioning, they have those programs in some utilities. So that technology was already
Right.
there.
And just daydreaming here a little bit, imagine maybe you don't want to you don't have budget to pay a lot for electricity, but you still want to use your AC. Maybe down in the future, somebody could set up some sort of agreement between their thermostat and the power company saying, if I use more than $5 of power per day, I'm just picking a number, running my AC, tell my thermostat not to run or set a higher setting. There's lots of possibilities for sure. Yeah.
So we're not really in the business of controlling that, but I was assuming there's going to be outside vendors who are going to be offering apps that are talking to appliances, and people are going to be able to we can already remotely control thermostats and things. So
Right.
Right.
the next will be your washer, dryer, or whatever. I'm assuming that's going to happen if it's not already happened.
Right, and then there would be policy decisions to make at that time, whether or not we wanted to enable that type of integration or if we felt it was detrimental. Yeah.
Honeywell actually has that program already, and Honeywell's owns Elster and Connexus Energy.
So what Virgil says, Honeywell already has a program for that.
Connexus Energy is already using the Elster Honeywell AMI system, so they're allowing their customers to opt into the Honeywell thermostat, the Wi-Fi thermostat, so they can offer them a quite a bit better rate by controlling their air conditioner using the thermostat. So it's an option for Honeywell and Elster. I think that's one of the reasons Honeywell bought out Elster, because they have all the controls and SCADA and different things like that. So, yeah.
So I'm under no illusion that some of this communication between your usage and the customer is definitely going to be available. But I also want to just point out that as a municipal utility, we abide by the strictest customer privacy things. We're not in the business of sharing information, sharing data, but customers are going to be able to get access to their information, I believe.
Right, you'll hear a lot of times right now, you talk about Google or other companies, you're the product, but here you're our customer.
Yeah,
We're here to take care of you. We're not here to resell your data or other things.
We were just, this is part of our conversation today. So we were saying we could all be sitting here today with our cell phone, and a Subway ad might pop up on our cell phone just because our location's on and we're close to Subway.
It has happened.
It's happened. So.
Yeah.
So no, but we're not in the business of selling that information, though I imagine there are vendors that are going to be trying to tie your usage to the data to help, make you more aware, I'm guessing.
All right. Well, any other questions about the water budget?
I see there's three, the electrical fund, the water, and the wastewater. What does it do for wastewater?
I can answer that one.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So, because we bill for wastewater, based on your water usage, so wastewater pays for half of the water meters just because they get their billing usage off of the water meter.
Right. And I just thought maybe I'd clarify one thing on this slide. I'd written 62, 64, 66 for meters only. That's what HydroCorp quoted us per year, like on an increasing price schedule, to do just the meters, no cross-connection inspections. And that'll be important for our PSC construction authority process. They want to know that cost separate from the additional things we're doing. So, all right, just a brief overview of the project plan, and then we'll pretty much be done. But feel free to ask any questions as we go here. Really, there's three sections of this project. There's the administrative piece, there's the electric AMI, and the water AMI. The electric side is going to move pretty quickly. There's not as much to do. We don't have to get the regulatory filings. So the water side is just more complicated. So we'll go one piece at a time. We'll start with the administrative side. And I just try to keep highlighting this to everyone. This project affects the entire utility. Everybody in the utility really gets involved in this and will be involved in this in one way or another. And generally pretty much directly. I don't think there's many cases where you wouldn't be somehow directly impacted by this project. So something we're very aware of, and Kevin's planning on establishing an AMI working group. And the idea is to get the key people together and make sure we're making the right contacts, doing the right things. Everybody has different pieces of knowledge about the utility and how we do things or what we need to do or maybe what we might need to change. And so we're going to try to make sure we run this as well and efficiently as we can. There's a lot of coordination to do between the PSC, WPPI, Elster, which is the company we'll be buying the meters from, and others. So just there's a lot of administrative work that needs to be done to make this project be successful. And so we're very cognizant of that.
And heavy communication with the customers.
And yes, yes, communication with the customers is very important. We don't want to just surprise. We're here. We're taking all your meters and replacing them. We want to communicate that and advertise that a bit and make sure that everyone understands what's happening. So the electric part of this project is, like I said, pretty simple. We're filing for a non-standard meter tariff, which is going to be, I think, the $20 to $25 range once all the numbers are in. And what that will do is, if you don't want the AMI meter, you can ask us to take it off, and we'll charge you that fee each month, and you can keep the old AMR meter, but then we'll need to send someone to your house to read your meter. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody takes it. I don't know. If I was already worried about AMI, I'm not sure if I'd want someone in my basement reading my water meter. So there's some interesting intricacies there with that opt-out option. So once we get that opt-out tariff, we can pretty much go crazy, so to speak. It takes 8 to 10 weeks to get the meters here, and pending city council approval, I'd love to start putting in the meters in April. And when I say I actually mean Wayne and Virgil and Brian, because April is when our disconnect season starts, and so it'd be really nice to be able to put an AMI meter on someone's house that we had to disconnect, unfortunately. And then if there's more problems down the road, we've already got a meter there, and we've made that one visit. We don't have to waste our time and come back to put another meter on, which we would be doing anyway pretty shortly, right? So just the timing there would be really good. And, based on the numbers, I think Brian and Virgil will be done easily in under 2 years. So they will run way ahead of the water, and that's actually good and very important, because the water meters do need the electric meters to be in place to transmit their signals. So you just need an electric meter nearby for the water. PSC, the PSC is the big bugaboo with the water project, and you can see that there's a lot more detail here. There's just a lot more to do. Like the electric, we'll be filing for the opt-out tariffs. That's currently in progress. Then we'll be filing PSC construction authority paperwork. And it's just a PSC process that you go through. I've been in direct contact with the gentleman there that handles this paperwork, and I've asked him tons of questions. And he's happy that I've been calling him before we started the project, not after. And I asked him things like, have you ever denied a construction authority request? Well, no. But, they do want to double check your rates and make sure everything's buttoned down, right? So it's a good double check for us. It helps us think about a few things that they want us to be thinking about. Then we'll be issuing an RFP, a request for proposal, for a contractor to come in and help us with the water. That's a kind of a process in itself, I guess. And depending on the contractor we hire, there's going to be timelines and schedules, just some management to do there. At the same time, we're going to be talking to WPPI and Honeywell and Elster and saying, hey, we need these meters, and here's what we're doing. And they already kind of know it's coming, but we'll be saying, hey, we're doing it for real, and let's get this set up. So that's kind of the first quarter. The second quarter is actually getting the construction authority, choosing a contractor, coordinate with them, get everything scheduled for training. There's a lot of training with water that has to go on that doesn't need to go on with electric. So there's just a lot of coordination there. And then finally, hopefully third quarter time frame, we get the construction authority from the PSC. That typically takes 4 months. And the gentleman there indicated that they shoot for 120 days, but they're not meeting that target right now. So it could be longer. In fact, we should expect it to be longer. So looking about 4 months minimum, probably 5 or 6 would be my guess. Once we get all that, we can start installing water meters. Go ahead as quickly as we can. So, about 533 a year. Contractor would do about 1,300 a year, and they would probably do it in waves. So we'd probably schedule a month or two where they'd come and just do their 1,300 meters, and they'd leave for a year and come back. That's how other cities have typically done it. So rather than like this ongoing thing that's continually happening, there's a period of time where there's an intense meter change out for water, and then it subsides for a year. Questions? That's the project.
I just want to say thanks for listening to that, because this is a very important and big step for our utility, and it's worth the hour you had to listen to that project. But this is big stuff that you need to understand when the public asks. We need to be fully aware of what we're trying to accomplish with our utility. Being a more valuable utility to our customers is the end is what we're trying to accomplish here, and meeting customer expectations moving ahead to 2019 and beyond. So thanks for enduring that.
Just a really quick question about how you're going to educate the public that it's going to be happening. Like, I guess, what is the specific plan? Because everybody sort of collects information and learns about information in different ways. So I guess, how are you going to communicate all of this to everybody?
I'll say we'll have a pretty robust marketing plan for that. That will include social media, newspaper, billing inserts, videos, flyers. Probably will go to private business. What do you call those type of meetings you meet on Thursday mornings, Tuesday mornings on?
So the landlords?
Yes, the business breakfast, things like that. So
Yeah.
we're going to make a real effort to get out into the community and many, many different marketing angles to let people know about what's going on. And definitely, we want no surprises.
Right.
I was in the pilot program, and I can just tell you, you need to communicate with people. That's important. It's very important that people know what's going on and what to expect. So we get that, and we're going to go heavy on the marketing and let people know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Looking for approval on the resolution recommending City Council approval to proceed with AMI metering for electric and water.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution to proceed with AMI metering for electric and water.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same. Resolution passes. Let's see here. Now we are at finance reports.
Okay, just real quickly, we'll go over the electric, water, sewer, and stormwater funds. Year-to-date revenues for electric are $12.9 million. The year-to-date expenses are $12.8 million. We still have $923,000 still outstanding payables, so that is also good news. Cash and investments for the utility total $5.5 million. Our kilowatt-hour sales have increased by $7.4 million this year, resulting in electric charges for service to increase $230,000. Annual kilowatt-hour sales are $117.5 million, with purchase and generation kilowatt-hours totaling $120.3 million. So that recognizes about a 2.3% system loss in transformers and wires. Water fund year-to-date revenues $1.8 million, expenditures about $1.7 million. Cash investments for the water utility are $1.9 million, with outstanding payables of $38,000. Year-to-date sales 14.4 million gallons higher than compared to a year-to-date in 2017. A little drier summer potentially. Sewer fund year-to-date revenues are $3.1 million. Year-to-date expenses are $2.4 million. So the sewer fund is in really good shape. And cash investments for the utility total $4 million, with outstanding payables of $206,000. Stormwater year-to-date revenues $540,000. Year-to-date expenses are $577,000, so a little higher on the expense side for stormwater. Charges for services have increased $13,000 in 2018 as compared to 2017. Cash and investments for the utility total $452,000, with outstanding payables of $80,000. So all four utilities in good shape. Stormwater fund just a little bit upside down with a few investments in infrastructure this year. So happy to report that good news.
Got a question for you.
Yes.
The electric fund, right on the first few bullet points, the 2.3% losses, it just uses the word minimal, and I'm just wondering if this is something I haven't caught before, Is that less than normal?
That's pretty typical losses. We've adjusted those. That has to do with our substations, our size of transformer sizing to make sure we get the right size transformers, not too big. And then just typical line losses, distance. So
Right.
sending electrons over distances, you also have losses due to
Sure.
friction, basically.
I was asking because we have the substation and those things you just mentioned, that it has kind of changed our system somewhat, that maybe if we were doing better on that percentage.
2.3 is in the acceptable range. It may have
Okay.
been a little bit worse, but typically, Wayne, is that what we're experiencing? You got more to add on that? So Wayne monitors this stuff, actually.
I was actually surprised to hear the 2.3%, so that means we're trending in the right way. So
I mean, related to new technology?
that always helps, yeah, new technology, getting rid of the old. And that means tree trimming. We're also doing a better job of tree trimming as well. That all affects that as well.
Sure. Cool.
Anybody have any questions? All right, moving on to the utility dashboards.
I don't have a lot to add to that. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the pictures in there. Some good shots of the burnt-up cable that got struck by the stake. Some of the primary transformer installations, some underground cable installations. That rotor shaft, I have to take my hats off to the wastewater treatment plant again. That picture of the rotor shaft on page 36, that's amazing that those guys down there at the wastewater treatment plant basically did that themselves. They did hire that crane to come down and help them lift that in there, but they got this giant 24-inch piece of steel that they ordered from St. Paul. It was delivered here. Our guys installed all those fins on there by hand, by themselves, took out the old one and put in the new one for under $10,000, and that was a cost that was going to be roughly $40,000 or $50,000 if we contracted that out. So they took it upon themselves to get that done, and I can't commend those guys enough just for the ingenuity and the can-do attitude out there at the wastewater treatment plant. So, we had a couple water main breaks recently. You may have seen that one on Main Street, Vine in Maine last week. Just an old piece of pipe that was installed in 1972. Had a circular crack, started leaking, and we fixed that last week. So that's really all I have on that, unless there's any questions.
Any announcements at all?
Yeah, I do. There's a legislative rally coming up February 25th to the 27th. I'll just pass these out. If anybody's interested in going to that, let me know by the end of the week. The utility pays for that with the help of WPPI Energy. I know Diane's gone a couple times, and Diane, if you want to go again, you're certainly welcome to go. But we can send a couple people. So it's in Washington D.C. You're able to meet with legislators and talk about energy-related issues, and I think it's pretty worthwhile. Don't you think so, Diane?
Sure. If I can give a shout out for it, you get to meet with our senators, and also I met with Representative Kind to talk about utility-related issues. You have some meetings ahead of time, so you know what issues might interest you or what you might want to talk about. So it's kind of fun to be in Capitol Hill. And there's some excellent speakers. The hotel is very nice. And of course, it's Washington, D.C., so you can catch a few sights while you're there.
And WPPI does help organize some events and get-togethers.
Oh, yes,
So
we
you can
always
meet
have
with-
a really nice Wisconsin dinner.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to go to that, again, today's Monday, so by Friday, let me or Lene know. And again, we'll take care of the expenses on that, and we fly out there for a couple days. And it's kind of fun if you have the time to do it. So just let me know. And then lastly, last Friday at the annual meeting for WPPI Energy, they unveiled their annual calendar, and believe it or not, we are in September. So you can look through that, and River Falls got the September photo.
Miss September?
Ms. September. So, Ms. or Mr. September, or X-September, I guess, would be politically correct now, I guess. So, anyway, we're in September, a nice picture of Raymer Field, the high school football game, I think, and nice pictures in there, so. Friday Night Lights. That's cool.
That's cool.
So, anyway, I don't have much other than that to add, so thank you for your patience and time tonight. Again, that's a big topic. It's a lot to digest, and it's the holiday season now. Now we can sit back and enjoy the families and Enjoy your holidays.
Enjoy the lights on Main Street.
There you go.
They're great. I had someone compare them to Vegas.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anybody have anything else? Well, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are
Second.
adjourned.